Welcome back to Just One Question. And I am delighted today to have Alida Zweidler-McKay on the show with me and now you, because Alida, whoops, I'm knocking over things on my desk. I'm so excited. Alida is an executive coach and consultant who gave me a huge aha when I first got to know her, in that she explained to me that her work involves figuring out how people interact in an organizational sense, and how that sometimes takes things out of the personal and means there are bigger, higher, let's say, or at least more complicated organizational reasons for conflict and that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to understanding that even a little bit better today. Alida, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. And we should say the immediate reason for this call, this podcast, this chat, is that Alida recently completed a TEDx talk at TEDx Walden Pond 2024. And it was about this very subject. So, Alida, just take us back a bit and tell us what inspired you to think about giving a TEDx talk. It's a lot of work, after all.
Yeah. One of the things I've been an executive coach and consultant for a long time, and I've worked with teams and teams in conflict, especially, and individuals. And I am seeing a rate of burnout and exhaustion these days that is just really, really high. And the more I've thought about my clients and the people I've been talking to, the more I've noticed that there's a real connection between the stress that leads to burnout and conflicts that people are part of every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got inspired to do the talk because there are certain strategies and ways of looking at conflict that have worked really well for me and for my clients. And I wanted to be able to share those more broadly so that other people could have those ideas and those tools as a way of managing their own conflict and hopefully reducing some of their stress and some of their burnout.
That seems like it's really important because, yes, in the public speaking world, that's all anybody's talking about these days, is how burned out everyone is, how burned out the audience is, how burned out employees are. There's a lot of evidence, a lot of research on it. So can you give us an example of what one of these conflicts that leads to burnout might look like, and even just a hint as to what we might do about it?
Sure. I think people face all kinds of conflicts all day, every day at work. I mean, work is really set up to solve problems, and whenever you have a problem to solve, there's going to be some kind of built-in conflict where different people are coming at that problem from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the examples that comes to mind recently, I was working with a client who is the director of a particular unit inside a big consulting company. So she runs kind of a service branch that provides products and an approach that other consultants can go out and use in their, sell to their clients as an added thing.
Mm-hmm.
But she is having some conflict with another one of the partners because she really sees her role as developing this particular set of tools and ideas, and he sees her role as someone who should be out selling new work.
Yeah.
And, bringing in new clients. And so, underneath it, what she's feeling is all this pressure from him to perform,
Mm-hmm.
to be out trying to find ways to sell her projects into clients. But the way she thinks about her clients and her work is that it's really an add-on to a bigger project. It's not its own thing that you would sell. It's something that requires a bigger project, and then she can be an add-on piece to it. So the two of them are in this conflict about whether she's contributing enough to the firm,
Mm-hmm.
whether she's growing her part of the business sufficiently. And it really, underneath all that, is really about what's the vision of the role and how they're
Mm-hmm.
defining it. And then, is it even reasonable given what she does and leads and the way that her team works for her to sell independent projects? Or is there a different way that they need to structure the performance requirements of her and her team as more of an add-on, and then give incentives to the other partners to sell that work in. So a little bit of a complicated example, but one of the ways in which, our vision, our own vision of our role and what we should be working on and what we should be focused on might be at odds with somebody else's vision of our role and what we should be focused on. And then how that can lead to some conflict and some differences.
It reminds me immediately and viscerally, and it's related or in the same universe to my earlier career back when I was working for first one and then a second consulting company before I started my own business. And as a communications coach, I was hired on to coach the consultants who were winning clients and doing work and doing billable hours. Right. I didn't have any billable hours because my job was just to get them better at their jobs, to help them communicate better. Well, as long as the firm was expanding and making money hand over fist, it was fine. But as soon as the growth rate slowed down, the consultants looked around and said, "Where can we cut the fat? Where's the excess?" And I was instantly identified at the first consulting company as excess. I walked out the door and my phone was ringing. Back in those days, there were still phones on walls, and the phone on the wall was ringing, and it was the second consulting company hiring me. So I felt very lucky, and I thought, I'm going to make myself so valuable that they won't fire me this time. Exactly the same thing happened. And then when I started Public Words, because I said, the heck with this. But I think it's an inherent thing in consulting companies. If you're not contributing to the bottom line in the sense of billable hours, that's really what drives a consulting company. Then you're going to be looked at, especially under times of stress or tension, you're going to be looked at askance. So yeah, exactly. And the shame of it in this case is that her vision for her unit is that it's really a way to help the consultants who are out selling the work to expand what they deliver, and to enhance what they deliver. So it's not even just back office, it really could be something that they could bring in, but there's a bit of a learning curve where they're going to have to really understand what she does, which is very technical. And so she's got a communication problem to help them know what it is and how to sell it and the value it can add. And then kind of to encourage them. And here's where the other problem comes in. There's not an incentive set up for them to share those revenue points. Right. Why should they? Yeah.
Right. Why should they? So as long as she's being held accountable for bringing in revenue, there's always going to be this conflict of like, well, how much of that project do I get credit for versus you?
Right.
And it's a disincentive for them to bring her in, which is a shame because for the firm overall, if they partnered on it and brought her in, they'd have a bigger revenue stream and they'd make more money. But as long as, they're both held accountable for revenue and there's this built-in conflict about who gets credit for it.
Yep.
There will be a disincentive for them to grow their projects in that way, and she will be stuck not able to bring in, her own work. So part of what we're working on is, can we change the incentive structure so that people get points for bringing her in as opposed to getting penalized? Right.
It makes perfect sense. And it's that's part of the whole incentive system of consulting companies and their complexities, and each one's a little different, but those same kind of basic issues apply. So I can't resist asking just a little bit about the TEDx experience. What was it like preparing for a TEDx talk, and what was the experience like itself? And was it fun? Was it horrendous?
Yes.
How did it go?
Yes, it was fun and it was horrendous.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
The thing that was great about it was that I've given talks before and I have a set of ideas that I put out into the world, but the TEDx process really requires you to hone it down to the essence, and that takes work. It's that Thomas Jefferson quote, "I would have written a shorter letter had I more time."
Right.
Really getting it down to the essence and the core ideas and the specific example that's going to illuminate all of the ideas all at once. And of course, the trimming out of there are 7 million things more that I would want to say. So that was a real challenge, and a good challenge. Like
Hmm.
it really helped me focus my thinking and get clear about what I wanted the world to hear about in that talk. And then, memorizing it. I haven't memorized a talk for decades. I think
Mm.
told my English teacher on Facebook, like I kept thinking of her because the last thing I memorized started with one that April. It was Chaucer's Canterbury Tales my senior year of high school. So,
Yeah, sure was. Yeah.
and every time I was going to practice, that phrase came up first because it was like the last thing I had to memorize. So that
Yeah.
was, a little bit of a not my favorite part,
Hmm.
but again, the practice of it and really knowing cold what I want to say and how I want to say it was a fun sort of muscle to flex and practice.
Excellent. And so, what's one of the tips you gave? Three tips in that talk for
Yeah.
avoiding burnout. We have time for you to tell us just one tip for avoiding burnout in handling these kind of conflicts.
Yeah, well, I think it's the one we've been talking about. The three tips were get present, put it in perspective, and stay in partnership. And what we're
Hmm.
really talking about here is that put it in perspective idea, that sense
Mm.
of, whatever conflict there that you're having at work, chances are it's it's part of some bigger issue, whether that's around incentives or role definitions or different parts of the organizations having different goals, so conflicting goals or expectations. There's usually something that goes beyond the individual. So it
Mm.
might feel like this person's a jerk or that person's being unreasonable or
Mm.
this person's expectations are too high or whatever. But usually, if you can kind of get behind that and see what's going on in their world, you can see what's really at the heart of the conflict and then you have a chance to do something about it.
Amazing. Important in this era of conflict and incredibly rapid change. Alida Zweidler-McKay, everybody, thank you so much for being on Just One Question. And here's to resolving all those conflicts out there. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.